Members, welcome to the meeting. It's the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene. Let's invite the administration to join us. Agenda item number 1. Information paper issued since last meeting. The Secretariat has not issued any information papers to members. Agenda item number 2. Items for discussion at the next meeting. We have the list of outstanding items for discussion and the list of follow-up actions. Members can refer to these documents. The next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of July, Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The administration proposed to discuss the following 2 items. 1. New unified brand for agricultural and fisheries products. 2. Combating illegal fishing. Do members have any views on these 2 items? If no, at the next regular meeting we are going to discuss these 2 agenda items. Agenda item number 3, public markets. Welcome Mr. Tse Chin-wan, Secretary for Environment and Ecology. Welcome Mr. Tse and his team. Before the administration take us through the papers, members please press the button if you wish to speak.
好，咁啊，局長最
Secretary, when you're ready, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. This January, at the panel meeting, I already told members that we will discuss the way forward for public markets. Afterwards, our colleagues have reviewed the future of public markets. We have made informal exchanges with stakeholders and we are going to tell members what we think. We'd like to tap into members' views. The construction of public markets was to allow the seating of hawkers on streets outdoors to improve street management and environmental hygiene. We also wanted to meet public demands. Public markets are one of the ways to facilitate the purchase of fresh provisions by members of the public. It's not a welfare project. For the new stalls in public markets, they are generally rented through open auctions at open market rates. In recent years, the landscape or ecosystem of fresh provisions has changed. There's a wider range of choices, and there is also keener competition among suppliers. There is food delivery, there is online buying, there is also the trend of northbound consumption by the public. We can see a structural change in the use of public markets. We have also come to notice that the prices in public markets are much cheaper than those in shopping malls. Against this backdrop and landscape, the vibrancy and utilization rate of public markets have shown a downward trend. There is also a loss on the budget. As public markets involve a lot of public funds and resources, we also need to, at the same time, prevent any unfair competition between public markets and other private markets. This is why we need to think out of the box and drive innovation in order to meet public demands. The 15th Five-Year Plan of our country calls for promoting better interplay between the efficient market and a well-functioning government. That is why we'd like to focus on 3 main fronts today to implement reform. We'd like to seek members' views. 1. Reforming management. Under the existing management model, public markets are under the purview of the FVHD. Owing to rental restrictions, it's quite difficult to model the management model of private markets. It is difficult to keep changing according to public trends. In the Chinese mainland, they are practicing separated regulatory and operational roles for wet markets. In other words, the government is only responsible for regulatory functions, while operational matters rest with private sector or enterprises. The Housing Authority implemented similar arrangements for housing estates commissioned after 1997. This way, the food choices offered in public markets will better meet public demands. There is a worry in the community that there will be an increase in prices for food. However, food sold in public markets isn't much cheaper than those sold outside the public market. We have conducted a price comparison. We compared the prices of food sold inside public markets and those outside the public markets. There isn't a significant difference in price. According to the existing management model, we need to take a stable approach in order to take forward reforms given its legacy and long history. That is why we need to use the strategy of establishing the new four breakthrough. In Tin Shui Wai Area 67 in Changquan and Kutong North New Development Area, we expect to introduce the new arrangement. In the next quarter, the FHD will invite expression of interest in order to prevent monopoly. In Tin Shui Wai, we will introduce a new clause. We also want to use a more cost-effective manner to improve the hardware of public markets. We have taken stock of our experience of the market modernization program. Aberdeen Market and Lai Wan Market underwent market modernization program. There was an improvement in the operating environment. However, during the works, the stall owners were much affected, as were customers. There is keener competition right now. In 2024, in Queen Street Cooked Food Market, we piloted a stall enhancement project. It was kind of minor instead of an overhaul. The feedback was quite active, and we have now started a stall enhancement project in 3 cooked food centers. Despite the fact that overhaul projects can improve the hardware of public markets, stall owners and customers will not be able to use the markets for a longer period of time. By contrast, if we use a minor stall enhancement project that lasts a shorter time, the impact on stall owners and customers will be more minimal. This will be more cost-effective. That is why we believe we can focus on enhancing stalls under our market modernization program instead of overhauling the entire market. We also focus on leveraging market forces and rationalizing resource allocation. Under the 15th Five-Year Plan, it sets out promoting better interplay between an efficient market and well-functioning government. It also highlights that the market plays a decisive role in the allocation of resources. The market needs to make adjustments by consolidating the resources. The FEHD has assisted 9 public markets to relocate some stall owners who would like to continue with their operation. By so doing, we can make better use of public resources, and we can also allow retail markets to enjoy even more business opportunities. In our opinion, the government should adopt a pragmatic approach to consider ceasing operation or relocation in order to vacate the stalls for more efficient uses. We will also adopt a more pragmatic and cautious approach when going forward. Reform cannot be implemented overnight. We'll continue to proactively identify, adapt to, and drive changes. We will establish and follow the approach of establishing the new 4 breakthroughs. We look forward to hearing from members. We welcome members' views. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. A total of 13 members are waiting to speak, myself included, 4 minutes each. The lineup is Mr. Peter Shiu, Mr. Stephen Ho, Mr. Ronick Chan, Ms. Christine Fong, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Kitson Yang, Mr. Jonathan Leung, Mr. Scott Leung, Ms. Ling Chek, Mr. Chan Pok Chi, Ken Lee, Mr. Hong Kam In. Let's hear from Mr. Peter Shiu first. 4 minutes. Thank you. Just now we've heard from the Secretary. He was very pragmatic. It shows us the real situations. There is cross-boundary online shopping, and at weekends a lot of members of the public head north for consumption. On weekdays, some housewives also cross the boundary to do shopping in Shenzhen. Some even place orders online and then they carry the products such as vegetables and other foodstuff from the boundary control point. This has placed significant stress on local public markets. This explains the common high vacancy rate in public markets. This is not what we want to see. 3 new public markets, according to the papers, will use the new model. That is separation of regulatory and operational roles for wet markets. Some public markets under the purview of the Housing Authority are practicing this management system. The effect is actually quite good. We can see a lot of foot traffic in these public markets. I believe the new markets under this management model are quite profitable. Will the contractors be responsible for renovation as well? The Hawkers Association is actually an important stakeholder. Most of the private markets are their members, and they would like to know more about subcontraction. Is it possible to include them as well? Can they be made one of the stakeholders? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Shiu, for your views. Thank you for your support as well. Indeed, for Hawker Association, definitely it is one of our important stakeholders. They are also our partners when we carry out reforms. We definitely maintain close liaison with the association. We want to carry out the reform in new public markets. We want to stay close to real market operations. We want to breathe new life into the new markets so that the market will see better business volumes. This is a win-win situation. Above all, we need to take a market-oriented approach. The FEHD will send and collect expression of interest. Then we will continue to finalize the clauses, terms, conditions as well. We want to adopt an approach that is in line with the market situation. We want to better meet public demands. This is how we can help members of the public as well as stall owners working in the public market. This is how we will foster closer collaboration. Thank you. Mr. Shiu, quite a lot of members of the public head north for consumption. If these products can be imported into Hong Kong, of course, no problem. What about there is some fresh product like poultry, eggs? Probably the administration will have to work with the Customs and Excise Department. Random inspections need to be carried out, as fresh produce and poultry is not beneficial to the health of members of the public either. Yes, we'll definitely enhance publicity education and public education together with the Customs and Excise Department. Mr. Stephen Ho, thank you. I thank the administration for showing concern over the issue concerning public markets. The direction is actually correct. Of course, new measures will cover risks. In paragraph 12 of the paper, it touches upon 3 public markets. You specifically mentioned a lack of competition in the market. I'd like to know how many operators have you been in contact with? If there is too little competition, then it is not ideal either. Regarding risk management, public markets are indeed a good way for members of the public to buy fresh provisions. But the problem is, let's assume that the markets have to fold owing to a lack of business volumes. How will the government step in? Regarding market monopoly, as the Secretary mentioned just now, in older tender mechanisms, the bidders needed to be individuals. However, these individuals did not go through rigorous vetting mechanisms. Probably different individuals belong to the same group. They work for the same enterprise or company. In the end, the income and operating right is still vested in the company. So how will the administration handle this? What are the requirements you have for contractors? I'd like to know how the administration will handle this. So public markets, which are targeted to serve members of the public, can continue to do so in order to ensure the right for members of the public to buy everyday food. Thank you.
Okay, later on I'll ask the director to give you the details, but on the whole, firstly, we would adopt a prudent approach. We'll look at one by one all the new markets to ensure that in the market there will be people getting involved, and also for those interested, there will be ample time, adequate time for them to deal with the competition. And we want to make sure that we're not doing it in a rush, leaving people with no time to get prepared, or whether there'll be not enough supply of contractors. So we do the work gradually. And secondly, we also look at two aspects in particular. That is, during the tendering process, besides the price, we also consider the technological factors, not just look at the price alone as our criterion for choosing the operator. We also consider other factors determining the overall score for each potential bidder. So we'll know that different bidders may have different plans, and we can compare their plans of operation in making our choice, not just looking at the price alone. Otherwise, there could be large companies monopolizing. And thirdly, we will, later on, we'll iron out the details on, through the invitation of submitting bids. We'll need to insert clauses to avoid monopolies, that we should not just hand over the operations to one single company, or each company should not have control over what percentage of our markets. So we'll have to have adequate time, and we can consolidate our experience and options to compare various bids and plans of operators, so that there will be various companies competing. Director, would you like to supplement? Yes. In response to Mr. Ho's point, as for should the operators have problems and had to fold, what would the government do? Taking reference from the Housing Department's approach, if there's a single operator in managing markets, and the Housing Department will also monitor the work of the operators. So I think the chance of an operator closing shop would not come as a surprise normally, if that's the case. The new markets which adopt the SOM approach, if that model is carried out successfully, we'll also review periodically the situation. I believe that in the future, when we sign new contracts, there will be exit mechanisms included in the clauses. I hope that for the new markets, when they outsource the markets, I hope that I don't want to see just one single company operating all three markets in the future. Next one, Chen Chen Ting. I agree with the secretary who says that markets provide public convenience, but to meet the goal, you need to ensure that the markets can be sustainable. I've got 3 questions. I found that firstly, besides opening to walk-in residents, there are also official official apps for people to accumulate points, and it also need to be worked in combination with other platforms. So would you consider upgrade the market apps so that the competition can be increased? And also, I feel that the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department has its good way of renting out the markets, but for the people renting the stores, they want to have control over their operations. And yet, residents may want to see a certain shop mix. So how can you make sure that the store tenants can actually operate in the market, and yet at the same time, market demands, and also at the same time that there can be a certain kind of shop mix? And also, I also suggest that we should have gradual enhancement works rather than enhancement works in one go. For large-scale markets, if you are to go for gradual enhancements, would you do it on a floor-by-floor basis or stages so that for the larger markets, they can be modernized? Thank you. Secretary? Let me answer the third question first, and the rest will be left to the director. Our thinking is that we would not be like before, just demolish the whole market for redevelopment, because you can build a very nice market doing that. But then when the market suddenly is closed for the redevelopment, that would be a big blow to the residents. And if a member of the public has not been to a market for 2 years, then when it's open, it will not go there either. So we'll just carry out small-scale enhancement works first. But for the larger markets, you're right. We may need to make enhancement or changes by stages instead of having whole revamp in one go. I think that would be more pragmatic, and for the public and also the store operators, the impact will be limited. Even though for the hardware, maybe it's not as beautiful as expected, or you may wish, but I think we prefer the gradual approach. Director, Mr. Chen, you talk about the market apps. We've noticed about its utilization rate, or ways we can broaden the appeal of the apps. On the whole, for various market projects or promotional activities in the markets, we'll continue with them, and we're open to various views. And we hope that for existing markets, we will help them promote their products. So we'll try to do more of the publicity and promotional work. And secondly, about the shop mix, in the future, for the new 3 markets to be commissioned, if we are adopting the SOM mode, then we will take reference from the Housing Department's contract, the provisions in the contract on the percentage of particular kinds of products, for example, dry food and also wet goods. What is the percentage between them? This is exactly what we are going to be open to listen to the sector when they express their interest. We do need to strike a balance, say in the future clauses, we make the wording too rigid, then that might diminish the interests of potential bidders. At the same time, we need to ensure that future market operations provide a variety of goods for the public. So in our expressions of interest received by the sector, we'll be very careful with it. Next one is Christine Fong. Public markets are definitely something that is led by people. The secretary said that it's not a welfare project, but still, you are putting in so much public money into building them. I think the management of markets, even though I support outsourcing part of the market operations first, but I think the FEHD still cannot outsource its own responsibility in regulating the markets. And the prices are key. I hope that in your tender documents in the future, you need to be a goalkeeper for price management. You may not be opening up to the entirely to the market, but for some main food ingredients, you need to maintain a certain proportion. So, like to in the future tender documents, how can you ensure that the future bidders can sustain the operations and yet will not charge too much? I know right now for the FEHD markets, the rentals are about for a small store maybe $2,000 to $3,000. But if you are to make it market driven, then it could rise from $2,000 to $3,000 to $20,000 $30,000. So that means that the cost could be transferred to the residents. So that's what I'm concerned about. And secondly, I know that in 2024 to 2025, government-run markets suffered a loss of $700 million. So how can you strike a balance so that the first batch of outsourced markets can sustain? And there are also two markets which are new in Kutong North and Zhengguan O. Foundation works are being done at the markets. If there are new operators in the future, would the department, for example, run it so that maybe at night there could be cooked food available? Now the current design is very scattered, so sometimes you might want to attract people together at a particular spot for food. So would you also leave that to the operators in running the night food market? And how about the exit mechanism for the prices or prices of tofu, poultry or vegetables? Prices could fluctuate. So if you are to outsource the operations, how often would you review the price levels? And also, should there be some store operators which are relocated from other markets? Would they be given subsidies for the relocation? So I asked the director to comment on the relocation arrangements and so forth. But let me say this first about the price. You may have the impression that FEHD markets must be having lower rents and therefore the prices should be lower and because it's open to smaller vendors. But that's not the case in reality. Of course, well, we've done our own comparisons and found that FEHD markets do not enjoy any advantage over other markets in terms of prices, not just because our rents are lower. So why do we say that we have suffered losses? It's not so much that we are so anxious about the financial losses. Prices are not cheap even when the business is not doing well. So that's the key. We found that in the private market, looking at market competitions, you can see that even though for people renting shops that cost more than $100,000 a month, their food products even cost less than the food products in public markets. Therefore, we need to foster competition at the same time causing the prices to fall. And because of the competition and the products must be tailored to the public needs, otherwise shoppers won't come. So they need to meet public needs. Therefore, we would have a certain requirements on the number of stores, but if it's too rigid and it's not the best approach, therefore we're going for a new method of management. I'm not giving out too much details. For the other two questions, I asked the director to answer. Okay, on the relocation, remember you're concerned about for stores in existing markets, store operators because the market has to close. Then right now, we have some extra allowances for store operators who choose to close their store in that particular market. And should they want to be relocated elsewhere, they can, instead of the extra allowance, we will offer the store for them in other markets through bidding. Another question about the rentals. That is right now, FEHD markets, as well, I can say that for the new markets, the setting of the rents will be based on the market mechanism, depending on the location of the market itself, the prices in nearby shops, and how busy the area is, and so forth. So we'll actually set up or will decide on the rents based on market rates.
Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've already heard from the Secretary and the Director. I've also read the information paper. I support the direction. You are taking a pragmatic view of this matter. Yes, indeed, we do need to implement reforms. I have a few suggestions. Public markets are businesses in a mature community compared with a new district without any infrastructure facilities. These are two separate matters. They need to be handled differently. However, there is one common factor. Be it a new or a revamped market, we can see stores selling fresh provisions and those selling dried food or dried products, and oftentimes we can see a cooked food center as well. Is it a must that we need to have these three elements, especially in a mature community? Not really so. I don't see how the stores selling dried food can survive regarding cooked food center unless it has a lot of special features. Otherwise, it's difficult for restaurants to keep their heads above the water. So is it a must that we need to combine these three elements? We do need to think twice. As a community, it's yet to be mature. The government has a role to play. I support it. However, is it necessary to build a multi-story, a very beautiful modern market? Oftentimes, we don't like to climb stairs. We just want to make purchases. What about any transitional arrangements? Public markets are retail space. You can say whatever you want. Take North Metropolis as an example. The provisional sites can be as long as 7 years. When a community is becoming mature, you don't really need a public market that the government can step in any time. I hope that the government will consider this direction. Regarding the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, it needs to be updated as well. You factor in the number of population. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but it's quite outdated. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your views. Actually, we go along with each other. For the new markets, what is our plan? And for existing markets, what is our plan? We haven't yet settled very clearly our development plan, but we're on the same wavelength. Regarding new public markets, probably the government will have to step in before the operation of stalls. It's just a transitional arrangement. It needs to sell things that are in line with the needs of the community. However, when a community becomes mature, these stores will have to leave the public market, so it's more of a transitional arrangement. After a community has become mature, then we will hand over the public market to market forces. We are currently reviewing the operation of the markets, and probably we will have to discuss with other policy bureaus to make arrangements. That being said, we understand your point and we do agree. Thank you. Mr. Gitson Yang, Deputy Chair. Thank you. I fully support the direction mentioned in the information papers. The vacancy rate of public markets will only be on the rise if we do nothing at all. This proposal is worth our support. regarding separation of regulatory and operational roles for wet markets is not something new. It has been in practice on the mainland. As for public markets under the purview of the FEHD, it is being handled using a single operator model. In this connection, for the markets under the purview of the Housing Department, some people are worried about market monopoly. However, I've worked at a community level for a long period of time. The clauses in the contract have prevented market monopoly. For the 3 new markets under the FEHD, I'd like to know the ratio between the contractors and the number of stalls, and how is the Housing Department handling this? Regarding older markets, just now we talked about combination or closure. Well, I do understand when it comes to combination, you do not need as many markets that are very close by. If the vacancy rate is on the high side, it's only natural that you will combine some markets. However, regarding the closure of markets, probably a member of the public cannot find another market within 1 kilometer, and this will have a significant impact on the public. Will you pay regard to the actual situation in different communities? Will you not make any arrangements across the board when it comes to closure? Some practices or pieces of legislation are outdated. For public markets in the Chinese mainland, it's common to see patrons buy something and then they enjoy the food at the same market. In our new markets, is this permitted under the new legislation or the existing legislation? Otherwise, if we're still going to use a single operator model to manage these markets, I don't think this is appropriate. Probably the Secretary can consider these. Thank you. I'd like to ask the Director to reply. Regarding our way forward ratio mix, I'd like to ask the Director to give you more information. But first, we do not close any public market lightly unless the situation warrants so. We have very detailed discussions and consultation sessions with the community. Only when there is a consensus in the community will we do so. Otherwise, there will be a significant impact on the public with the closure of a public market. However, if we find it necessary to do so, then we will. Regarding buying food and having food right afterwards in the public market, this is actually a practice we have in Hong Kong. One can buy seafood in a public market and then have it cooked by a stall and then enjoy it afterwards, but it's not a very common practice in Hong Kong. It's a demand-driven practice in Hong Kong. What about the future? It will depend on market demands in the future. Thank you, Director. Thank you. With regard to monopoly, I understand the concerns of Mr. Kitson Yang. When it comes to the EOI exercise, when we want to sound the market out, or when we prepare the tender document, we will draw reference from existing practice. For instance, we will draw reference from the contract of Housing Department. The operation ratio should not go over a certain threshold. In the future, in the EOI, we will factor this in. We will tap into the market in order to get their feedback and views. Thank you. Mr. Jonathan Leung. Thank you. Regarding the current situation of public markets, the FEHD has done quite a lot, such as the Market Modernization Program. I agree that we need to draw reference from the separation of regulatory and operational roles take Aberdeen Market as an example. Stall owners told us the government did not step in. And when the government does so now, it seems that the government does not really know how to do so. In Annex 2 of the information papers, there are some pictures. As you can see, there's a signboard of Queen Street Cooked Food Market. Is it a must to use a certain type of font? It's about the flexibility of management. That is why we go along with the practice of separation of regulatory and operational roles. And if you are to do so, at which stage will you do so? When you invite tenders, or are you going to leave it to the market to make a decision regarding the trade mix? It needs to be in line with the needs in the community. And if you are to look for a contractor, you should conduct a public consultation to consult industry players. These details will decide whether the stores or the stalls inside the wet markets can stay afloat. Some public markets have substitutes. There are many fresh provision stores nearby, or online buying is very common. So will the stores be rented out for other purposes? Before overhaul, we need to revitalize the market. Thank you. Secretary, we do want to hear from stakeholders. We cherish their views. We take them very seriously. How will the future of public markets hold? How will it pan out? We need to draw reference from the separated regulatory and operational roles for wet markets, quote unquote, and I must say so. Regarding what is to be sold inside the wet market, recreational activities in order to attract more footfall, we can adopt a wide range of different methods to drive footfall. Many members of the public do not want to go out to make purchases, and we need to appeal to these people to go out and make purchase inside public markets. Anyway, we will listen to industry players. As they operate their businesses, definitely they want to make money out of it. I'd like to see if the director has anything to add. Thank you. Just now, Mr. Jonathan Leung talked about using new management model to manage the markets, but what about existing markets? How can we enhance the competitiveness of existing public markets? When it comes to restricted auction for stalls that have been left vacant for a long time, we can adopt the upset price, or even a price below the upset price. Regarding the size of stalls, some stalls are smaller. In new markets, the size of the stalls are larger. For adjacent stalls, we will combine them, and afterwards we will start auction. We believe this will make this even more appealing, and then we can enhance the competitiveness of markets as a result. Mr. Scott Leung, thank you. I agree with the general direction of the way forward for public markets as set out in the information paper. With the change in the fresh provisions market, with government input, I agree that we can draw reference from the separated regulatory and operational roles. This is the way forward to make better use of public resources. As the Secretary and other members have mentioned, the Housing Department has adopted the single operator model for 3 decades. They have a wealth of experience in this regard. Kwaichung Estate Market, Hoi Dat Wet Market. We can see that the single operator model can improve the operation of public markets. However, it is a double-edged sword. It is difficult for you to handle the situation after the implementation of a model that comes with pros and cons. When you work on a framework with contractors, I have some suggestions to offer. Regarding the trade mix and rental renewal and tenancy renewal, I hope that the framework will be clearer. For livelihood-oriented stalls, you may mandate a particular trade mix ratio. However, when it comes to tenancy renewal, the rentals may skyrocket. This might be one of the practices to weed them out. You need to maintain a certain trade mix. And in tenancy renewal, you need to formulate the framework to ensure some stalls in a particular trade will remain in the wet markets. There are legal litigations ongoing, so you may not be in a position to comment. Some might be under the purview of the FEHD. And if you drag your feet, this will affect the operation of public markets. Take Hock Choy wet market as an example. After a burst pipe, how are you going to deal with the situation? I believe we need to delineate the responsibilities very clearly. After the implementation of the new model, I believe there will be discussions in the industry afterwards.
Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lam, for your suggestions. We, of course, have talked about the HA markets as examples, but to us, we do have actually other examples of good separations of regulatory and operational modes. And they are actually more relevant to the needs nowadays. And also, we want to make our markets attractive to people because now with online ordering and other modes, you all know for the young people, they don't go to markets at all. So we need to come up with ways to attract them back to markets. So we are talking about the overall direction of single operator, but for the actual mode of operation, we will actually be ironing out the details later on. And also, for example, the handling of pipe bursting or other incidents, who should be responsible for what. So I thank you for your suggestions. I know for all those details, we need to look carefully into them and take follow-up action in doing our planning. Next one is Elaine Chick. I'd like to thank the government for actively trying to solve this problem of vacant stores in public markets and also to increase the competitiveness, vibrancy of markets. But many people do have worries, maybe that in the future will public markets become private and causing the prices to soar. As mentioned in the paper, public markets, well, they sell, actually, of course, they're competing with other sellers of fresh produce. But that may be the case in old districts. But for the new districts, it's quite worrying because in those districts, if you have one single operator of a market, then how can the government ensure that in such a vacuum, monopoly would not happen. What measures would you have to tackle that and to protect the rights of the public? And also, you said that in 3 districts there will be the new models, but don't forget about the existing markets. There are actually quite a number of vendors in markets who have shown or told us that why is it that the vacancy rate is so high in all markets is because of contractual constraints. For example, the type of goods that could be sold in the market, which before they bid for a store, they were required to only sell certain types of products lacking flexibility. So going forward, would you review the existing market ordinances and to make amendments so that in deciding on future operations of markets, can you, in a more systematic way, collect the views of store operators so as to achieve a win-win situation? At least try to save the existing old markets. Secretary, Director can supplement later on the existing markets. As mentioned in the paper, it's not that we will ignore existing markets, but for them, firstly, we would not carry out a fundamental change in management because it involves lots of existing tenants. So if we were to change any mode of operations, those tenants could be worried. So we want to implement a new mode in the new markets first. And in terms of the overhaul of existing markets, we will upgrade the hardware. And also in terms of the mix of products sold. And we can also integrate some stores to tackle the vacancy or rate issue, or to attract new vendors so as to increase the competitiveness, attractiveness of existing markets. So we find ways to help them. But we're not going for ultimate reform in existing markets. But your views are taken on board, and we will see how we can gradually improve on existing markets and explore more business opportunities for them. Director? Chairman, yes. As mentioned by the member, let me just supplement here. Well, we have various measures trying to increase to the people flow in existing markets in terms of the variety of products. In existing markets, you said that there might be a lot of restraints on what can be sold, so can we add to the types of products? So, but indeed, for existing markets, after consultation with the Market Management Committee, the variety of goods sold there can be changed, updated, and from time to time we're very open. And in some markets, we have added to the variety of products sold. For example, there can be beauty salons or stores selling Chinese medicine or hair cut services available in various markets. So in terms of the shop mix, we are very open. And for existing markets, under the current mode, indeed, if we want to branch into new categories, then we need to consult the relevant market management committee first. But I just want to make the point that we're not trying to limit what can be made available in the market. Chen Pok-chi next. Thank you, Chairman. In our discussions on the future for public markets, I'd like to know from the administration, do you have any support measures to promote new brands? Any measures that can be available to help? And also, can you also deal with what the sector has mentioned a lot in the past about, that is pork being smuggled into Hong Kong and sold as local meat. And also in the annex, there's this mentioning of a pilot scheme to let young people operate stores. Can you give me more details? Secretary, please. Okay, on the actual operations, Director can answer. For fresh produce shops, we're concerned about the freshness of meat sold. People have always been very concerned about that. In the past, we have seen not just in markets but actually on street shops, we have stepped up our inspections and acting on intelligence. We will carry out raids at various shops to curb any sale of chilled meat and that is claimed to be fresh meat. And as you mentioned, unified brand. Yeah, the unified brand for local products. What are we going to do to promote them? With the Agriculture and Fisheries Conservation Department, we collaborate with them to promote local products. We will see how we can step up our promotion and publicity for them. And also, the pilot scheme for young store operators. Yep. On that, there are various pilot areas in actually the one in Kuntong, even though the Yume Hawker Bazaar, even though it's not a market, but it is a place where the stores can sell their produce. In the past, we collaborated with voluntary organizations, rented a space to them, and to let them rent out the space to young store operators to sell various goods. So this kind of hawker bazaar actually was done before. And also in the equity market, we also explore how vacant stores can be better utilized. We're hoping to find a voluntary organization to rent out the stores to interested youths who can try to set up their own business. So now we are looking for the right voluntary organizations who might be interested. If you have other views on this, we're open to them. Next one is Ken Lee. On this reforming of management, the separating of regulatory operational roles, and have a market-led approach. I understand your thinking, but for new districts, it may be easier to run this reform, and for some districts or markets who have been operating well, then you may not need to rush to change the mode operation there. So going forward, we need to be concerned about whether some operators may become monopolies. So we may need to think about banning some companies from bidding for further markets if they have already owned operation rights in some markets already. And don't just look at price as your main criterion for awarding tenders. You need to look at the bidders' track records. You need to make reference more to bidders' past track records. For individual sectors, as mentioned by some members, like for example, those selling dry goods, they are worried. Even though you're talking about separating regulation and operations, but for some sectors, you may offer recommended rents so that some underprivileged sectors would not be driven out of market by future operators. In Annex 1, Annex A, as shown in the paper, I hope that you continue to have more exchanges with store operators and to have more promotional plans and also improve the number of people or improve the patronage of public markets. Secretary, monopolies, as we mentioned earlier, we care a lot about that. So we will, in choosing the tenders, we will not just look at the cost, but we'll also look at the score for the technological aspect, the strengths, the past experiences, and so forth. So we will look at the one with the highest total score. We won't let the large companies just having control over all markets by offering low prices. And also, we will also limit one particular company from operating a certain number, more than a certain number of markets. So we will try to avoid monopolies in that way. And for existing markets, right now, they don't need to worry because we are implementing this new mode. This new mode will adopted in new markets first. For the old ones, we will actually try to reform them in small ways first. So there won't be a fundamental change in existing markets. So we just want to set up a working new model first. When people are rest assured that we extend a new model to existing markets. So it will be a process, and people will have adequate time to see the change. And in the newly run markets, we'll definitely have close contacts with the vendors. So don't worry, we will definitely be very cautious in our work.
Next, Mr. Hong come in. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Secretary is willing to actively handle the matters facing public markets. This is worth our appreciation. I undertook a study on district governance in relation to public markets. One of these sections has to do with the enhancement of the public markets. However, times have changed, as have the building designs. The consumption pattern and mode have changed. Honestly, public markets are being phased out bit by bit. We need to start from the perspective of planning. We do need to make a change. Otherwise, according to the existing planning and standards, you need to continue to construct public markets. However, we need to understand that near buildings there are shopping malls. Residents just go to shopping malls to buy food, to buy grocery, and so on. Especially on hot days, residents go to shopping malls, or they either do not want to go out. Now we have online buying as well. For the younger generations, they make purchases online. Say for more younger generations to do so. The government will just continue to make losses. From 2024 to 25, the losses totaled $700 million. When you operate the markets, you're still running a loss of $700 million. So I'd like to know which public markets are facing even greater losses, which markets have profits. There are a total of 94 public markets. Do some need to be phased out? This is where we need to conduct an objective analysis. After we have built a public market and after we have put a lot of investment in a public market, why don't we subcontract the public market for an outsider to manage it? Then at least the government does not have to suffer any loss. Isn't that even more cost-effective? If the government is willing to subcontract the management of public markets to an outsider, then I agree. We need to continue to take forward this approach. In addition to our discussion of this agenda item, we have another agenda item to discuss the history or the legacy of public markets. Their positioning needs to change. So this question concerns the history of public markets. Any question on the separation of regulatory and operational roles? Yes. Well, I have other questions as well. Which public market is making losses? Which public markets are generating profits? Do you have any idea? Thank you. I'd like to ask the director to give you more information. Well, Mr. Hong would like to know which public markets are making profits and losses. Do you have any information right now? No, I don't have any information at hand about this. Your observation, Mr. Hong, echoes ours. That is why we think it is time we conducted reforms. The traditional operation of a public market without any reform will be phased out by the times, as times are changing. This explains the high vacancy rate in public markets. Business volumes and receipts are decreasing as well. So on the one hand, we are consolidating our resources, say we combine markets, and we also close markets that should not be kept. That being said, we still cannot uproot the problem. That is why we propose to use the approach of separating regulatory and operational roles. Well, like the approach mentioned by Mr. Hong, if we outsource the public market to an outsider or a subcontractor, then the government does not have to make any laws if the government is paid a certain amount of money. But we need to think how we can enhance the appeal of public markets. If public markets have other uses or other purposes in addition to spending, then members of the public will go to public markets. So our approach is to start with newer markets first. When we have a successful model, then we will introduce it to older markets. And for markets that need to be closed, we will do so in order to enhance the cost effectiveness. Thank you. Mr. Yuming, thank you. I'm not a member on the panel, but thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. The three new markets are in my constituency, that is the one in Tin Shui Wai and the one in Kutong North. That is why I have great concerns. Public markets are important infrastructure or facilities for grassrooters. However, old markets have different issues such as the high vacancy rates and aging. We do need to carry out a reform, and these three markets give us a good opportunity to explore this issue. I'd like to relate public views to the administration. Residents expect a new environment in public markets. Stall owners want to have a better business environment. They are also worried that an increase in prices will drive an increase in rentals, and this will translate into an increase in goods prices. Members of the public are worried that the cost will be passed on to them. Just now, members referred to monopoly and rentals. I'd like to continue to ask questions on them. How can companies not blindly pursue profits? We don't want large-scale enterprises to drive out smaller enterprises or companies out of the market. We want to allow smaller companies or smaller stalls to operate in new markets. We don't want them to be driven out of the market. Is there any special mechanism? Will there be any indicator which must be hit before one can apply to increase the rentals? We need to prevent rentals from being increased at will. We need to set an inflation indicator or index. Next, regarding tender documents, we need to prevent monopoly. Some public markets, some markets in Hong Kong have been outsourced, but these public markets look exactly the same. You can always find a couple of different companies or stalls inside these markets. They are like cookie-cutter public markets. I understand in the sense that there is a range of chain stores in these markets. However, when it comes to public markets, we don't want to see monopoly by larger groups. I know there's a committee on public markets. Will we continue to monitor the situation in order to protect smaller tenants? We need to protect their interests and benefits. Thank you, Secretary. Well, I'd like to see if the Director has anything else to add in a moment. Just now, Mr. Liu raised a lot of concerns. We are concerned about these aspects as well. But my take is that we cannot just switch back to our old model because of our concerns. we need to think how we can better help smaller smaller stall owners when their business receipts and volumes are not doing good. Well, I mean, when small stalls are being phased out by times, are we not going to do anything? No, this is not the case. There are a lot of stalls out there. We will move the stalls on Temple Street and we will vacate these stalls for someone else. We will let owners of smaller stalls operate in other places in Hong Kong. We will let them try. However, if they stay inside a public market and when they do not have any business at all, we shouldn't keep them at all expenses just because they are smaller stalls or smaller tenants or smaller companies. Regarding monopoly, as we said, we will not let consortiums take up all our stalls at a low cost. We will not let them corner the market. We will draw reference from their experience in selecting tenants. We understand your concerns. We will break away from the traditional concepts. We will make public markets more in line with public demands and needs. Thank you. Next, my turn. Thank you. Regarding the existing operational model of public markets between 2024 and 25, the annual losses were as much as $700 million. Probably the losses were even greater before 2024 to 25. So from the perspective of members of the public, should we still keep these public markets when we make losses? We do need to make a change. We have been saying that it's not being fair to the FEHD. We oftentimes asked about trade mix and the occupancy rate. The FEHD plays a management role. It's difficult if you ask it to be responsible for marketing, market competition, and so on. That is why I support the approach of separated regulatory and operational roles. Many members in principle support it, but we are worried about monopoly. Can you tell us clearly rental level, food prices, food types, trade mix? Will you set down clearer clauses in this regard? As I understand, you do not just draw reference from Hong Kong. You draw reference from the Chinese mainland as well. It's not invented by you, this I understand. What clauses are you going to introduce? Will you draw reference from successful examples? Members are worried that a consortium will drive up all the costs, hence the high rentals. In addition, apart from new markets, we need to look after older markets as well. I often visit public markets. I'd like to cite the Kowloon City public market as an example. It used to be very vibrant. Some stalls have already left the public market. What we can see are blue and white cordon lines in the front of the stalls. Many stalls have already left the market. It's much less vibrant right now. I support your new method, however, you cannot do so to existing markets. Will you consider allowing stalls to rent these stalls on short-term tenancy STT? Some stalls are indeed too small. You might probably consider renting these stalls in a unit of 3 to allow more operations. We cannot just sit on our hands and wait. What methods do you have regarding new markets? For new markets, I'd like to ask the director to say something. and I will ask the FHD to give you more information in a moment. We have drawn reference from the Chinese mainland. They practice separated regulatory and operational roles to the full. The government is responsible for food safety. They are also responsible for security, law and order, and so on. Regarding operation, is left to the market. In other words, they are practicing this system to the full. The circumstances of different communities play a large role. They vary from one to another. Trade mix, service model, they can vary significantly. I'd like to ask my colleague to give you more information about Kowloon City Market.
Thank you, Secretary. And thank you, Chairman, for your question. Existing markets. Well, as mentioned by the Secretary, we've got various measures to address the issue of vacancy rates. I'm not going into detail or repeat what has been said, but we would offer attractive prices to try to rent out the empty stores. Or we'll also explore with district groups or NGOs to see how we can use the space available. And as for some stores where they can be integrated, yes, we also consider that, combining stores. But of course, it depends on the situation of the market in some locations because of there may be physical constraints or the stores may not be connected physically. So we need to consider various factors. So we are in communication with markets in different districts and to consider suggestions that can make more effective use of existing spaces. And if a suggestion involves FEHD or any policy that is beyond the remit of FEHD, we will approach the relevant department. And we also step up our publicity and promotion. So through various ways, we hope to try to rent out as much stores as possible, while in the meantime we'll explore other uses that we can actually use the stores for, even for the short term. Thank you. The first round of questioning has ended, but two members have asked to speak for the second time. Besides Christine Fong and Stephen Ho, who else has second round of questions? If not, then, well, this involves a lot about livelihood matters. So why don't we wait for the two members to ask the questions first, and then the Secretary can answer. So Christine Fong first. Thank you. Just now, Mr. Lam Shulo talked about the positioning of new markets. They, for example, in Lohas Park, it has a community of more than 100,000 people. I support actually creating some prefabricated units near the residential buildings so we can have a short-term markets run by, for example, local organizations. So you don't have to wait for the market is ready in 137 first before there's a market available. And now, since we have three markets who are going to adopt the new model, that is privately run markets, so would you, as mentioned in the paper, add to the points of operators with experience in greener community or running community living room and so forth? The government can not just take a sum of money in the form of rents. You can also, for the new markets, the investors or the operators won't need to spend up to millions or tens of millions of dollars in renovation. So if after considering the rentals in terms of can you set a limit to the marginal profits and then get the operators to try to derive their profits from rents, and then you can create a sense of happiness to the people using the market and the tenants, knowing that this type of new markets will not cost more for the products, and also you can actually offer comparable prices. And in terms of the contracts, I suggest that a contract should last for only 6 years, and for every 3 years, and 3 years for the small tenants. In the past, the contract used to be just 2 years, but sometimes it will take you a lot of time already to have the remodeling done and get the license, so that's not reasonable. Well, Chong Ho-Fong, well, I'm not going to ask about the modernization program for markets again because that's been asked, but I want to know as for the Stephen Ho, yes. And as for the proportion of different kinds of stores, how about in relation to certain licenses? Would it lead to the situation where, there are just about, for example, licenses for selling poultry, there are just about 130 such licenses left, and the government is not going to issue new licenses. So, but if you're not actually offering new licenses, then there may not be any tenants selling poultry in the new markets. And secondly, during my communication with the government, we told them that for some empty stores, in Buiwo, it took them 6 to 9 months after a store has become vacant before it's open to auction again. So, for example, if it's a store selling pork or fish, then the public cannot get those foods. The government carry out auctions monthly, but mainly the auctions happen at popular markets. But for some non-popular markets or markets in remote locations, how do you deal with the empty stores? Yeah, the same with the Kowloon City Market. Secretary, please. Director, please. You can answer. He can give you more details. Thank you. You mentioned about stores selling poultries. In the new markets, we have plans to separate various stores, and then some of which can sell poultry. And in 25-26, we did for some stores that are actually allowed to. We approve a store to sell poultry. So we have actually offered that kind of products in new markets. And we also discussed just now about pricing. That is the possibility of a single operator resulting in higher prices, or the prices being too rigid. And the Secretary already mentioned that for existing markets, we do not impose any limit on retail prices. I'm sure that in the future, whether it's under single operator model or for existing markets alone or not, we will not actually impose restraints or constraints on the prices charged. For the future expressions of interest or the tender document, as for whether there should be provisions on review mechanism for the setting of rents, deciding on the documents, we will take on board your views. But on the whole, the principle is we need to strike a balance. That is, we want to have the single operator model, which offers more flexibility for the operators, and that's not what the FEHG can do in its operation of markets. So we need to maintain that flexibility. But at the same time, your concern is about the rentals, where they should come under any kind of framework. So please understand that no matter how rents are set, an important point is it is tied to the market. So even for our new markets in setting our rents, we do need to make reference to market rates. So I think the market forces, we need to consider that. I think going forward in our deciding on the tender documents will be very detailed in our approach, in the wordings. Okay. Next one, Chong Ho Fong. Secretary, in the paper it's mentioned that for the new markets, we'll adopt the single operator model. I've got 2 questions in relation to that. Just now, actually, it's been asked how you can prevent monopolies. Say if there are 5 stores selling pork, even though they're run by different bosses, but behind them may be the same investor. You just now, from what you said just now, I couldn't find any useful suggestion on how to prevent such monopoly from happening. And for the tenants, they are under no social pressure because they're not known to the public, and what they care about is how to make more money. So ultimately, who the stores are rented to, I'm sure that it will be rented to the highest bidder. So I think for Roundtable, we need to make sure that all the stores have no mutual interests involved. And at the same time, we hope that the stores can attract people to come and who can buy good products at affordable prices. So the most important is to set up a market management authority, and it should contain professionals who know how to carry investigations and who can think of ways to avoid monopolies, because we've seen the number of suppliers now out there do have such kind of knowledge and experience. So I'd like to ask you, are you going to consider setting up a market management authority instead of just getting suppliers to come? Secretary. I don't think that creating one more authority then you will make improve the operations of markets. I think what we're doing now is that we will take a cautious approach and we will adopt the new model at some test sites first to set up the way of operation, and then once we've absorbed the good experience, and then later on we'll extend that to other markets. And if you identify any areas where improvement can be made, we will definitely learn from experience and act on that. But at this current stage, I don't think there's a need for us to add another layer of management by setting up a market management authority. Thank you. So I think that's the end for today's this item. Thank you for answering questions from 17 members. So now I invite the administration to come in for the next item, which is on this topic of proposed amendments to the Sweeteners in Food Regulations CAP 132U. We welcome the Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology, Ms. Diane Wong, and her team. So thank you, Secretary and the Director of FEHD, for attending the previous item. So because this item is related to legislative proposal, so members from all other members from outside of this panel are free to join this discussion. Members who want to speak, please press the button. So 5 members have done so. I think we have another meeting coming up, so we need to seize the time. So Under Secretary, if you're ready, please, you may start your introduction, but please finish it within 10 minutes, because just now the discussion on the market issue took quite long. So time to you now, Under Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Later on, the government will make amendments to the Sweeteners in Food Regulations CAP 132U. That is, the amendment will consult the public on it and the sector. Together with our colleague from the Center for Food Safety, we are consulting the panels on these amendments. Sweeteners are food additives that impart a sweet taste to food in place of sugars. Like other food additives, sweeteners are permitted for use only after stringent safety evaluations that demonstrate they are fit for consumption. Right now, the regulations list 10 permitted sweeteners. We have reviewed the existing regulations and propose amendments to it, considering the general standard for food additives laid down by Codex, and also mainland standards, and also the local dietary habits and intake of Hong Kong people. We've also made reference to the practices of our food trading partners so as to better protect public health and harmonize with international standards. The proposed amendments are supported by the CFS Expert Committee on Food Safety. Our amendments involve three aspects. One is to bring polyhydric alcohols under regulatory scope, and the second aspect is to expand the list of permitted sweeteners, and thirdly, to make reference to international and mainland standards and to specify the requirement for individual sweetener food pairs. It is similar to our previous amendments and most of our amendments are in line with proposed standards. We are confident that the sector can adjust to the amendments to help the sector comply with the latest changes. After we are finished with the amendments, we will set up a transitional period, and the Center for Food Safety will also carry out technical meetings for the sector and issue guidelines for implementation. Within this year, we will consult the public on details of the amendments and also prepare subsidiary legislation to amend the regulations for tabling at the Legislative Council for scrutiny. We expect members to support the amendments, and now I'll pass over the time to Dr. Kong from the Center for Food Safety to brief you on the details of regulations, after which we're happy to answer any questions from members.
CFS, thank you. I'd like to brief members on the details. The purpose is to better protect public health and to harmonize local and international food safety standards. Sweeteners are food additives. They impart a sweet taste to food in place of sugars. In Hong Kong, they are subject to sweeteners and food regulations Cap 132U. They are regulated using a positive list approach. In other words, no person shall sell, consign, deliver, or import any food containing other sweeteners except the scheduled list, except the permitted sweeteners on the scheduled list. We use the backbone of Codex. It is established in the 1960s by the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Health Organization. It is aimed at protecting consumers' health, ensuring fair practices in the international food trade, and above all, it is recognized by the World Trade Organization as a standard-setting organization for food safety. It is said that the standard is the most important international reference standards around the world. Under it, we have Codex General Standard for Food Additives. Since 2007, CCFA has been hosted by China. It is chaired by a Chinese representative. Only when sweeteners are approved will they be included on the list. We have international standards and mainland standards, and we have drawn reference from existing practices. We consider it necessary to make the relevant amendments. Just now, the Undersecretary already mentioned the relevant arrangements. One, to bring polyhydric alcohols under regulatory scope. They are known as sugar alcohols. They have been widely used. It is not yet within the regulatory scope. However, the GSFA, the Chinese mainland, and various major food trading partners of Hong Kong have covered polyhydric alcohols in their standards, despite the fact that the scope of the existing regulations does not include polyhydric alcohols. We recommend adding more to the existing list so that they can continue to be sold in Hong Kong. Aventame is proposed to be added. It is a new generation of sweetener with high sweetness intensity of about 20,000 times sweeter than sucrose. Only a trace amount is needed to impart a sweet taste. After the amendment, food containing Advantame can be legally sold in Hong Kong, bringing new business opportunities and offering more choices to consumers. After legislative amendments, the total number will be 21. And all permitted sweeteners will have undergone stringent safety evaluations by the expert committee. They are deemed fit for consumption. We can see the proposed permitted sweeteners. For the 10 on the left, they are existing, and for the right, we can see some more. On the left, there are 6 types with asterisks. We recommend amending their Chinese names in order to bring them in alignment with the names used in the Chinese mainland. The regulations currently only specify a list of permitted sweeteners. We propose drawing reference from international practices to refine the standards for using various sweeteners in different kinds of food based on the food category system in the GSFA. We aim to specify the maximum permitted levels for over 900 sweetener food pairs, such as new tame frozen fruit. About 80% are based on Codex standards, whereas the remaining 20% are based on mainland standards, such as candied fruit. At the same time, the GSFA permits 11 types of sweeteners that are generally safe for use in general food in accordance with GMP principles, that is, good manufacturing practice. 10 types of polyhydric alcohols, not included in the regulatory scope of the existing regulation, and 1 type, thaumatin, which is a permitted sweetener under the existing regulations. We propose to regulate these 11 sweeteners in accordance with GMP principles under the regulations in a similar manner. The quantity applied shall be limited to the lowest possible level necessary to achieve its intended effect. We recommend making other amendments, including the adoption of carryover principle. Some food is prepared with 2 or more ingredients, such as yogurt with cereals. The maximum permitted levels of sweeteners in such food will be determined based on the proportion of individual ingredients used and their respective corresponding maximum permitted levels. We also propose to exempt any naturally present sweetener component. If a sweetener is a naturally present component in a food, such natural content will be exempted. We also propose to update the Chinese names of certain existing permitted sweeteners to align with those in the GSFA and mainland standards. We have already conducted fact-checking. The CFS has collected food samples from the local market to conduct tests. About 98% of the test results were in compliance with the proposed maximum permitted levels. The expert committee on food safety supports the proposed amendments. We plan to consult the public and the trade on the proposed amendments to the regulations within this year. We will consider the feedback received in detail, prepare the subsidiary legislation to amend the regulations, and submit it to the Council for scrutiny. In order to help the food industry and private organizations to prepare, we propose to provide an 18-month transitional period following the completion of the legislative procedure. During the transitional period, full compliance with the requirements of either the regulations before amendment or the amended regulations shall fulfill the statutory requirements. We will conduct technical meetings for the trade and issue user guidance. We aim to facilitate the trade in understanding and complying with the new requirements. Thank you. Mr. Kitson Yang, Deputy Chair, thank you. I support the relevant amendments. The amendments this time round are actually in compliance with the Codex standards and the Chinese mainland standards. The total number of sweeteners will be raised to 21. This allows members of the public more choices. However, I'm concerned with thaumatin. Advantame. It comes with high sweetness intensity of about 20,000 times sweeter than sucrose. I'd like to know how we can let the public know the intensity of sweetness. We need to help them make more informed decisions. Thank you, Undersecretary. I'd like to ask Dr. Zhang to give you more information regarding this sweetness intensity. Thank you. Regarding promotions and publicity, We have online publications. We also published articles on sweeteners. Perhaps we can publish more articles explaining sweetness intensity of different sweeteners. After this legislative exercise, we will enhance our public education and publicity efforts. Thank you. Mr. Kitson Yang, I'd like to follow up. Thank you. In addition to articles, will you consider preparing clips to help members of the public to have a better idea of this issue? After all, Aventame is 20,000 times sweeter than sucrose. This is indeed a cause for concern for members of the public, especially those with diabetes. We need to help members of the public to make more accurate choices. I know you have articles, but I want better publicity efforts in order to let more members of the public know. Thank you. Undersecretary, we will incorporate more pictures to explain to the public what kind of food and drinks contain Aventame. CAP 132W stipulates in future legislative amendments, sweeteners need to come with labels. This will allow members of the public to be clear about the concentration and contents. Members of the public, therefore, will have an idea and they can make comparisons. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho, thank you. Previously, we have some legislative amendments, and we drew reference from Codex, and we just made a little bit of adjustments. Now we have national standards, and we can be more in line with the reality. When we adopt the standard, we can benefit in the INT sector. And this time around, you are proposing to increase the number of sweeteners from 10 to 21. This is to be in line with the existing practice. As for milk powder or milk formula, you are required to monitor the supply when 5% of the products are outside the threshold. At present, the figure we have is 98%, but I have to remind the administration that you need to watch out for special product types. Now we talk about fish. This regulation might not be as effective. Such as golden thread. What about medical products? You really need to pay attention to this. Regarding industry consultation, I'd like to ask more about the grace period lasting 18 months. Thank you. The CFS conducted sample checks in the market. That is about 900 tests. As member mentioned, 98% of the food meets the requirements, whereas the remaining 2% does not. What are these? They are Chinese dried fruits, marinated vegetables, cakes, cookies, and so on. In our consultation with the industry, we communicate new regulations as well as the transitional period to the industry. We have an 18-month transitional period. I'd like to ask Dr. Zhang to give you more information. Thank you. Later, we will have a public consultation session. In the interim, we will collect feedback from the public as well as from the industry. I'd like to give you more information about the 2% of food products we mentioned. Some products did not meet the statutory requirements when they were imported from outside Hong Kong. That is, the raw materials already did not meet the requirements. They need to think how they can meet our requirements. Regarding 2%, I hope that you will set down clearly whether the 2% of products can be replaced. If there are medical food products, if they cannot be replaced, then it's not effective. I hope that you will do more on this front. Deputy Secretary, anything to add? Thank you. Members concerned about what type of food we have seen from the 2% of products, not all of them were, none of it was manufactured outside Hong Kong. What I mean for future legislative amendments. Thank you.
Next one, Chen Chen-ying. The permitted levels of sweeteners involve public health, so I'm pleased to see that in line with changes in the food industry, the government is updating the standards. But I've got a question here. The paper mentions that if the sweeteners actually are naturally present in foods, then they are exempted. But now fruit growers have kept improving on their crops. In the past, unlike in the past, with the new forms of farming, the sweet level of some fruits, particular fruits, could have gone up. So would you, in line with the latest growing methods, adjust the naturally level of present sweetener? And there could also be artificial means by farmers to add artificial sweeteners into fruits to make the fruits taste like natural sweeteners. So in your inspection, how can you tell between natural and artificial sweetening? And also in recent years, there are also fruit growers who have come up with innovative fruits which have two kinds of taste. In longan, for example, in Guangzhou, there are longans that taste like lychee. So how can you assess the same kind of fruit whether the flavor is naturally present or artificial and with additives that make it taste like another kind of fruit? Dr. Zhang. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. You talk about naturally present sweetener. Some sweeteners do actually exist by nature, but the definition of additives, however, means that they are added to a food. So for an importers, they can ask the producers or even the fruit growers to check in the growing process whether there have been any additives added. If none, then it's natural. But if it's additives added to the plant, then it will have to be regulated. As for your point about distinguishing between new types of crops, I would make reference to, of course, information provided by the manufacturer. And also, looking at literature, you can tell the particular kinds of fruits, the level of naturally present sweetener there. So in our test, if the level of sweetener exists what is recorded in literature, then we can have reason to suspect that artificial sweeteners may have been added. As for the taste, well, it depends on whether sweeteners are used to change the flavor, and if they have used sweeteners, then they will be governed by this regulation. So if they want a crop to taste like longan or lychee, then it may be due to other reasons. You said that you have permitted up to 900 sweetener fruit pairs, but for small vendors, they may not have the resources or time to go through all 900 pairs. So besides the technical meetings, can you open up some platforms for the suppliers or traders to check for themselves whether the fruits they have imported meet or do not go beyond the permitted levels? Dr. Zhang, I think the testing for sweeteners actually can be done. We have also found that with today's equipment in testing for sweeteners and also the level involved, the existing equipment can be done and the cost would not go up to test, would not cost more to test for the level of sweeteners present in a product. Next one is Shu Ka-fai. Thank you. This latest amendments to cover more than 10 types of sweeteners, to bring it in alignment with Codex and mainland standards. I think the overall direction I support it, but Secretary, I also like to thank you and the Deputy Secretary and Dr. Zhang, who met with our trade organizations to inform us and discuss about the proposed amendments. And you have also the importers and trade associations have so far not given us any negative feedback. But I think after today's meeting, I will continue to closely communicate with them and see if there are any importers who may have products that exceed the permitted level and see what they can do. Or if there are cases in which they see no problem with the products that they are selling, then I will let you know as well. So far, I haven't received any concerns from the traders. So I personally support the amendments. Okay, view expressed. All right. Okay, please take note of that. Next one, Hong Kam Inn. The government, in order to better protect public health and to align local standards with international standards, I think making the amendments, I do support it. At the same time, I'd like to ask about, should the amendments be passed, would the government step up its inspections? And if you find any products that violate the law, what actions would you take? And also paragraph 14, it mentions that the government intends to consult the public within this year and also to consult the trade as well. When would you consult, carry out the consultation, and when do you want the amendment to be put forward to LegCo? The Secretary, yes, as for the timetable, I can give you the information, and then Dr. Zhang could supplement on the testing issue. After consulting this panel within this year, we will, on the amendments, consult the public and the trade. We will, depending on the feedback from the public and the trade, and then upon the feedback, we then can work on the subsidiary legislation and then submit it to LegCo as soon as we can. We do hope that, well, as soon as possible, within a year, we can submit the documents to LegCo. So any other members have questions? I was asking whether they would increase the inspections. If they find any irregularities, what action would they take? Dr. Zhang? Thank you, Mr. Hong, for your question. The Center for Food Safety has a food monitoring scheme under which every year we test 65,000 food samples. So should these amendments take effect, we will, on the risk-centered, risk-based principle, will carry out sample checks. Over the past 5 years, we tested about 900 food samples to see whether sweeteners, prohibited sweeteners are present, but we haven't tested the level. But should we find in future any violations of the regulations, then we would contact the suppliers concerned, and if needed, we would ask the supplier to take the sweeteners off the shelf, and also contact the origin of the products and inform the party there. And we also announce our finding to the public, and also let the trade know as well. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. So on this item, no other members have any questions. So I think that's the end of our discussion. Thank you, Undersecretary and her team, for taking part in the discussion. And the other business? No AOB. So meeting adjourned. Thank you all.